Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, and today I'm making a video about what a TFSA is, why it's so important, and why it's something you need to sign up for literally as soon as you possibly can. This is one of those things that they don't teach you in school that I really wish they did. If they taught this to every single person in their last year of high school, I think we'd have a lot more people in this country that are a lot more wealthy. This is one of those videos that I'd really recommend not clicking away from and watching through all the way till the end, because once you realize what's going on here, you're going to be thinking, oh my goodness, why wasn't I doing this sooner? And that's because using a TFSA is part of a strategy that is the easiest way for Canadians, even if they're not earning a lot of money right now, to be able to save and invest their way to $1 million in their lifetime. This is something you should especially be doing the younger you are, because if you start as young as you possibly can, which is 18 for you to be able to open up this TFSA account, it's far more likely for you to hit that million mark as soon as possible. But no matter how old you are, this is something you should be setting up and signing up for as soon as possible, because the difference between doing it now versus doing it next year could be the difference between thousands of dollars. Let me explain. If you start using the baseline version of this strategy when you're 25 years old, by the time you're 60, that's after 35 years, you'd end up with a total of $148,913. But if you put it off year after year and you say, you know what, I'm going to get started with that next year or next year or next year, and you end up putting it off for 5 years and get started when you're 30, it can have a huge difference. Right here, you'll see that the final amount would be $102,000. So that's a big deal. That's around $45,000 that you could be losing if you don't get started ASAP. And remember, this is only the base version of the strategy. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can ride this strategy to $1 million in your tax-free savings account or your TFSA. So this is what a TFSA is, and I'm going to explain it as simply as I possibly can, because if you're like me, when I was younger, I didn't understand a single thing about how this account worked and why it was so beneficial, and I kind of blame that on the Canadian education system. There's so much that's left out, so I'm going to try to fill in the blanks here for you as easily as I can. A TFSA is a tax-free savings account, and the way it works is any money you put into this account, any growth that you see in that money, whether it be with an interest rate in your savings account, or if you open it up as an investment account, any growth you see from your investments, all of that money is not taxable. Now, typically when you have an investment account and you see that money growing and growing and growing, when you sell that investment and you actually take the money out and try to use it, the government's going to say, we need our piece too. They're going to take half of the gains or half of the profit you've made from the investments, and they're going to tax it again on top of taxing it the first time before you put it into the account. If you follow the strategies we're going to talk about a little bit later in the video, this could amount to tens of thousands of dollars that the government could take from your gains. But that's where the TFSA is a little bit different. This is a special account where you can insert a certain given amount of money every year, and any growth you see on this money, no matter how much it is, will not be taxable and the government can't touch it. That means if you put money into this account and you invest it and you leave it there and let it grow for years and years and years and years, and it grows to a huge sum of money, when you take that money out, the government's not going to be able to take that $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 worth of taxing that they would typically get if it wasn't a TFSA account. As an example, let's say you've worked at a job for a little while and you've been able to work hard and save up $1,000, and you decide that you're going to put this $1,000 into a TFSA account. This $1,000 that you're putting into the account is called your TFSA contribution. After one full year, let's say that investment is now worth $1,100. So you've seen a little bit of growth. You have $100 extra in that account that has been there just from the growth of your investments. You can kind of think of that $100 as some extra income that you've made over the course of the year. But the beauty of this is that it's not taxable. Typically, when you make $100, the government says, hey, you know what? I'm going to take that. You only get 85. Maybe I'm going to take 15 from you. But with this $100 that you've just made from the investment, nope, they can't touch it. And now the beauty of this is that that $100 that you now have earned tax-free will have the ability to make you even more tax-free money, because instead of $1,000 that was in your account when you started last year, now you have $1,100. So now this $1,100 is what's able to grow into an even higher number next year and an even higher number after that. And all the growth you see from this snowball effect starting to happen is 100% tax-free. Even if you choose to take this money out of the investment account or out of the TFSA, you're not going to have to pay tax on that because you already paid tax before you put the money into the account. So any growth you see isn't taxable. It's huge. So there's a lot of flexibility here, right? If you absolutely need to, you can take this money right back out of the account if times get tough. Of course, I'd always recommend leaving it and setting it and forgetting it and not touching it for the long term, but it's nice to know that you can reach in even if there's an emergency and you need to actually use some of this investment money. But there is a limit to how much money you can put into this account each year. The government recognized, hey, this is a pretty sweet deal for people, so we're going to limit it so they can't just put all of their money into TFSA. So they've set limits on how much you can put in yearly. And just like you might expect from the government, they've made it a little bit more confusing than it needs to be because they've changed how much you can put in on a year-to-year basis depending on what year that was. So let's take a look at what those contribution limits were so you can find out just how much you can put into this account depending on when you're getting started. So here's a quick history of how much money you've been able to put into a TFSA on a year-to-year basis based on the government's decision on what was an adequate amount for this. So from 2009, which is when the TFSA concept started, to 2012, that was $5,000. 2013 and 2014, that was $5,500. 2015 was a little bit of an anomaly because they allowed you to put in $10,000. 2016 to 2018, that was $5,500, and now 2019 and 2020, they're allowing you to put in $6,000 this year. But if you didn't open up an account to claim these contributions in the years that they were announced, don't worry. You're actually able to use all of this contribution room even if you didn't open up an account in the first place. It's sort of all stacked up, and whenever you want to open up that account, you're going to add up all those years to get to your entirety of your contribution room that you can put in. The one hitch is that if you're younger, you have to start counting only from the year in which you turned 18. So if you turned 18 last year, you could use last year's contribution room and this year's contribution room sort of stacked together. But if you were 18 well before 2009, when TFSA limits were starting to be announced, you could claim all of this contribution room and put all of that money in now. Now, if you're anything like me when I was starting out, you might not have an extra $5,000 or $6,000 at 18 years old to be able to put into one of these accounts. So let's take a look at just how much money you can make over time through the power of compound interest if you start investing just a little bit of money into these accounts. And you'll notice I just used the term compound interest, and all this is referring to is the fact that, just like we talked about before, when you invest your money, it grows, and then the future growth is based off of that already grown amount of money, right? So if you have that $1,000 turns into $1,100, now your growth is going to be based off of that $1,100 instead of off the $1,000. So you're going to be growing at a faster rate. The more years that you let this snowball keep rolling, of course, the higher amount of money you're going to end up with in the end. This is why it's so powerful if you start investing in this at a young age. But it's powerful throughout any age because, of course, it's tax-free, which is better than so many other investments. So let's say you open up a TFSA at exactly the right time when you're first able to at 18 years old. This will give you the most amount of time to let your money grow. Now, if you're planning on withdrawing your money or taking your money out of this account by the time you're 60 years old in order to retire, then that will be 42 years that you're going to be able to let your money grow from the time you're 18 to the time you're 60. If you put $2,000 into this account to start and you commit yourself to being able to save up enough money to put $2,000 in each additional year after that, by the time you're 60, just by following this strategy, you're going to reach just under $500,000 or $500,000 just by following this simple TFSA strategy. And for these examples, we're using a 7% return rate because this is what you typically expect to get in the stock market if you invest in an index fund which tracks the overall market instead of individual companies. Now, to take it even further, let's say that you're able to either get a job that pays a little bit more, or you're able to be more frugal with your expenses on a day-to-day, and now you're thinking, okay, it's realistic for me to contribute $3,000 or maybe $3,500 into my TFSA account following this same strategy each and every year. Now, when we calculate that and scroll down, it's a huge difference just by doing $1,500 extra each year, right? We get to a total of $841,000, which is a big difference from that just under $500,000. Now, let's say you take this even further and you commit yourself to putting $5,000, which is still below the annual contribution limit, into this TFSA account. Now, if you contribute to this each and every single year, let's see just how much money you're going to be able to have by the time you're 60. I think it's going to be pretty high. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're at a limit or a maximum of $1,187,449 after those years that you've let your money grow while committing yourself to this plan of inserting $5,000 to this account every year. And just for fun, let's say you're 18 right now and this is your first contribution and you're able to put in $6,000. Chances are that amount is going to go up over time, but let's just imagine that it stays at $6,000 every single year that you're able to contribute. Now, by the time you're 60, that's going to turn into almost $1.5 million, just short of it, $1,418,000. That is a lot of money for you to retire on by the time you're 60, and it's a lot better than most Canadians will do by the time they're at that age. And remember, when you decide to take this money out of the account, it's all tax-free. That's what makes this so much more valuable than the money that you're earning by going to work, right? When you go to work, you have to give a lot of that money back to the government in the form of taxes. So if you make $100, maybe you're only taking home 85 or even less, depending on your tax bracket. But no, all of this money that you've already paid taxes on before contributing to the TFSA, when you take it out, all of this growth, all of this over $1 million of growth is tax-free. So you're not going to end up with only $600,000 of that $1 million of growth. No, you're going to get the entirety of it. That's what makes investing in this TFSA account so powerful. Now, if you're a little bit older, I could see how you might be bummed out by the fact that maybe you didn't start investing like this as early as you may have liked to, now knowing this information. And it reminds me of the saying that goes like this: the best time to invest is a long time ago. You know what the second best time to invest is? It's right now. And there's never going to be a better time for you to invest than right now, because the longer you're invested and the longer you spend with your money in the market, the more money you're going to have when you go to withdraw it. Tomorrow is not going to be any better, so it's so important to get started as soon as possible right now, today. And imagine just how impactful this could be on your family. Even if you're not going to be around long enough to see a huge impact from investing like this, if you're able to open this account for yourself, learn the basics, and then teach this to your children or maybe your grandchildren. Imagine if they started with how young they are right now. Imagine if they started and were able to see 60 years of growth, how much of an impact that could have on your family for generations and generations to come. That's why I think investing like this and strategies like this is so important to teach young people as soon as possible, because it can have a huge impact on you and your family's future. After all, that's what this channel is all about, bringing information and updates and news to Canadians about their money so that they're more likely to be able to set themselves up to live a more wealthy future. And I'm bringing updates and tips and tricks like this all the time. So if you're interested in any of that and you want to set your family up for a more financially stable future, make sure to hit all those buttons down there. Like, subscribe, the notification bell, all that good stuff. And I really hope you made it all the way to the end of this video, because in my mind, this is the most important topic to talk about to all Canadians, and especially to young Canadians. I get so incredibly frustrated when I think about how little financial education there is in Canadian schools. But if the government isn't going to implement this sort of curriculum into the schools, we need to be the ones that take responsibility for learning this and then teaching this to our children. So that's the whole point of this channel, just trying to bring that information to you so you can set your family up for the future. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video has helped you out at least a little bit, and I think it could have a huge impact on everybody's futures. And I'll see you next time.